And we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris, and this is We Love Comics. And I am about to talk about pretty much what would be considered a taboo type of video. But if you watch my channel, you know me. I'm not afraid to talk about things that most may, for fear of retribution from some of the people in the comic book community. But if we don't discuss things, we don't learn from them. So that's what this channel hopefully is going to be all about. And I want to share my opinion, and keep in mind this is just my opinion. Yours may differ, and that is okay. Why speculators are actually good for the comic industry. And I'm glad to see people already starting to come in, and thank you for letting me know you can hear me. I appreciate that. I have been collecting comics off and on since basically the mid-80s. And the one thing I want to let people know about is I know from personal experience the benefit of speculators. Now, of course, with anything, there is good and bad. It all depends on how much there is. If there's not enough of something, it could be bad. And if there's too much of something, it can also be bad. So like anything out there in the world, it is all about finding the balance. Now, this video was inspired by one of my subscribers because they were talking about the Fantastic Four book that I mentioned in the earlier video. And they were saying there were like 50 different variants and saying how that's too much. And I absolutely agree. I think they're going overboard with that. That's why I'm only getting those 2 different covers and that's it. The reason that the companies do stuff like that is there are people that, for whatever reason, they have the need to have to buy them all. It's like almost like Pokemon, collect them all. So as long as the money comes in, they're going to keep going. Now, I know there's plenty of purists out there who get comics solely for reading them. And that's perfect, because like I've always said, and many people have said this, there really is no wrong way to collect comics as long as you're doing something that makes you happy. Like, for example, I tell people all the time to make sure you do your research, and people ask me, you know, should I buy this comic, should I buy that comic? And the thing I always recommend is, if you are buying it purely for profit, you, on average, are going to be disappointed more than you're going to be happy. Also, books may take nosedives, and then decades later may all of a sudden be the hottest book. Because look at things like, for example, like I said in another comment from somebody, look about 10 years ago. Was Black Panther relevant? Were Guardians of the Galaxy relevant? Was Luke Cage relevant? How about Iron Man over 10 years ago? You know, Venom. Nobody was stacking Amazing Spider-Man 300s over a decade ago. At least not everybody. So sometimes it can take a little time for these things to happen. So that's why I always tell people, if you buy what you love, then it doesn't matter if the comic goes up or down. Because I remember spending about $80 from New Mutants 87 back in the 90s when I missed it when it first came out. And everybody wanted that book. Well, after the 90s of the comic crash, you couldn't sell that book for $10. But now, if I wanted to sell them, I could turn around and sell them for a profit. But it did take a few decades. So, you got to be careful of the reasons why you're doing things. If you're doing it solely for profit, like I said, you're going to be disappointed more than you are ever going to be happy. So then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's why I can buy a book. Like, for example, the Amazing Spider-Man book yesterday. Yes, one of my subscribers, when I did the live show, told me that the book had the first full appearance. So, because it was a book I actually stated in that video that I didn't even want, I didn't read it. So I just took their word as face value. Now, it ended up being wrong, and I paid the price for that. But I'm still, even if it ends up the character isn't in it at all, I love that cover. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and to me it was worth the price that I paid for it. So even if that becomes a dollar bin book, I don't regret my purchase because I only buy things because I like them. And that's the best way to do things. So when you're talking about speculators, I know in this community there are some people who see that as poison. you may want to view it almost as a necessary evil, because without speculators that put tons of money into this industry, not only would the comic stores on average start closing down, but all of these movies that we love would start to disappear, because people were making the same complaints about the people in the 90s, all these speculators. And what happened was, the problem was, the people like Marvel and DC, and also to a lesser extent Image and Valiant, they went overboard with their gimmicks. And eventually, even the speculators had enough, and the speculators are the ones that walked away. That's what caused the comic book crash. Because the readers are going to be there whether there are 5,000 different variants or there's no variants. They're buying it because they read it. But the average person that only buys for reading, and not that many people that say they buy for reading don't buy speculating books. I mean, they won't admit it, and that's kind of hypocritical. I mean, stand up for it if you do. But those people who just buy because, you know what, I like reading a couple of books, they're not spending thousands of dollars. That is not going to keep the comic book stores in business. That's not going to justify Marvel spending billions of dollars to make all these movies that we love. So one of the things I see in this community and anywhere in life is a lot of people base things solely on their emotions and their feelings. And if somebody goes against somebody else's emotions or feelings, they feel like they're being personally attacked. And that's really the wrong way to live, because in a supposed free society, we should be able to think and agree or disagree or like or not like anything that we choose, as long as it's not harming anyone else or infringing on somebody's rights. The problem, especially in these smaller quote-unquote communities, is there are some people that feel it's their need to be regulating what other people do by either group attacking or making fun of them or whatever. And that shies the people away. And there's an old saying that says, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. So let's just say tomorrow, every single speculator decides, I'm not going to spend another dime on comics. Okay? The stores are going to go out of business because they're losing all of that revenue from those higher priced books. The comic book industry is going to suffer, and a lot of the lower print comics will disappear. Especially, there'll be less and less #1 issues. You're going to have the movie industry suffer, because those people, if they walk away from comics because maybe they got frustrated or annoyed or what have you, now all of a sudden the movies that we love are going to start to disappear. And just think of all the people that earn a living selling comic books online. You know, people don't stop to think that some people that sell comic books may do it to support a family, may not have the money to be able to open up a store. Look at all those online comic shops. They will go out of business. So we need, as speculators, and I consider myself more of a speculator. I've never denied that. And there's nothing wrong with it. If you think there's something wrong with it, that's your opinion. It doesn't make you right. But I, as a speculator, need the readers, because we need those people that have the passion to know what's in the book, what to look for, what is a good read. Those people are going to be there through thick and thin. We need that section. But on the other end of the spectrum, we need the speculators that are going to invest the money. Because, like it or not, that's what keeps the industry alive. Because any of you that think that the people that run Marvel, DC, Image, any of the other studios, if you think they're 100% doing this because they love it and they love you guys, well, you're being fooled. They do it for money, because if they only did it for the love of it, they would sell it at cost. They sell it for a profit. So they're not doing it exactly 100% for the love. Now, does that mean they don't love what they do? Well, that'd be silly to assume that. But when it comes to the movies, for example, it's not Stan Lee that is responsible for these movies. It is shareholders and investors who will invest their money in hopes that a movie will become what? profitable. So people don't mind watching these movies, and they love them, but they fail to remember that the only reason they ever get done is because there are speculators and investors who are taking a chance by investing their money into a product in hopes to get a return. Because if they did it for the love, then you would see movies that flopped in the box office still get made. But you ever notice when a movie flops, they don't make a part 2? Or they don't even continue the franchise? So then, is it really for the love? Or the reality is it really for the money? And unfortunately, a lot of people do not think from a businessman's perspective. They only base it on emotion. So they see these evil speculators coming in and ruining the market by raising the prices of books. Well, first of all, if you, for example, are mad that Iron Fist, his first appearance, is $100, well, you had decades to buy it under 10. If it was so important to you, why didn't you buy it when nobody cared about it? Why are you now mad that it took you all of these decades to want a book pretty much because everybody else wanted it? So is that the speculator's fault? Or is it your fault because you did not use that decade of no one caring about a book to be able to get that book for cheap? The problem is most people just like to complain and will be unhappy no matter what people do. And that's why you'll see my channel, I'll talk about things that may be considered taboo. I challenge anyone else to make a video like this and give their honest points of view. Don't just, go with the crowd. And I think a lot of people do that where they're so afraid to say how they really feel that they'll make videos that basically placate the audience so they can get the high fives and all the thumbs up. I don't base what I believe in on other people's responses, although I do care if I'm doing the wrong thing, like for the mistake I made the other day. But like I said, I improved from it. But keep in mind, when the speculators go, the comic book industry disappears. And it shows most people buy books because they want them. And when do they want them? When everybody else does. I'll give you a prime example. How many videos right now are telling you to buy the first appearance of Apocalypse or Ultron? Now, those books you can get a lot cheaper than a couple of months ago or a year or two ago. They've definitely gone down and they're a lot more reasonable to get. How many people are searching for them right now? Not many. I haven't seen a video recently where somebody said you really need to get the first appearance of Apocalypse right now because it's so cheap. Why? Because nobody wants it anymore. People want things because other people want them. And I tell people all the time, that is a trap. That's where you have to be careful. And that's why I always say, do your research. Have patience. Buy what you love. If you solely do it for the profit, you're going to be disappointed. But make no mistake, as much as speculators need the readers need the speculators if you enjoy all of these things that are currently going on right now. Especially if you sell comics for a living. Or enjoy the movie industry that speculators who spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on comic books and comic-related products count on to make a profit. But for some reason, I guess with this whole socialist push rate recently, people view profit as a bad thing. Well, if you get rid of profit, you get rid of business. Because if you think that Disney, Warner, Sony, any of these companies, if you think they're going to make movies, if they make no profit, you have no idea how the world works. And you will be sadly mistaken as you watch your beloved items fade away into the distance. People just continually get fooled by the fact that people think that the people who make movies, who make the comics, who do all of these things, make the pop, the pop figures, that they love them just as much as we do. They may love them, but make no mistake, they love the money even more. Because if Marvel loved comics and the comic book characters as much as they all claim to, they would be putting out the movies for free and taking a loss. But yet they don't do that. But they'll make you believe that they love it, because if they told you the truth, some people might be turned off by that. And most people want to live in what I call La-La Land, where they only follow and believe in the things that resonate with them, and they forget that there's other parts of the world that may not be including your choice or your point of view. So if you don't see all sides of an argument, then you're only going to live a one-sided life. Because you could look at a coin and only focus on the side that has the heads. That doesn't mean the side with the tails doesn't exist, even if you sit there saying, I don't believe it. And that's the problem with most people when it comes to either speculating or talking about comics and things. They only want to talk about the things that are popular. Because I guarantee you, without even having to look, I guarantee you there's already thumbs down on this video, and that's perfectly fine. Those are people you cannot reason with. And those are the people I no longer wish to focus on. I'm talking about the people that are here that understand how business really works. Businesses are trying to sell you a product. Do you think they're going to sell you that product? I mean, look, for example, for Star Wars lately. They've been insulting fans left and right. How many people are going to go dive in and spend all the money you can on a product from somebody that's been insulting you? You'd be pretty foolish if you do, and this is coming, like I said, from a die-hard Star Wars fan who saw the original movie back in 1977 when I was 6 years old. I loved Star Wars. I will never put a dime into that industry ever again. I mean, look at the whole Rick and Morty thing. Whether you want to get into the fact of what he did was right, wrong, funny, or what have you, my principles say I do not want to condone and give money now to a person who finds pulling their pants and underwear down and straddling a baby doll and simulating fornication as something I want to support. Now, whether you do or not is up to you, and that's why I canceled my subscription for Rick and Morty. And I was loving that show. But everybody has their reasons for things. And let me tell you this. If he did get fired and everybody stopped buying his comic, do you think he would try those kind of quote-unquote jokes ever again? Or do you think he might change what he's doing? Money is what speaks. And that's why in the history of governments, they have what's called the golden rule, which means he who has the gold makes the rules. But unfortunately, most people think it's senators, it's governors, it's mayors, it's presidents, it's dictators, it's kings and queens. No, it's who has control of the finances. But people don't want to believe in that. And just because you don't believe in something doesn't mean it's not happening. Like I've said on my other channel, you don't have to believe in air to breathe it. And another thing I said on this channel, a magnet, if it had consciousness and could think, it could say, I don't believe that I'm a magnet, and I don't believe I can attract metal to me. That's not going to change the fact of that it will. So, as much as there are some people that think that speculators are a dirty word, keep insulting them, keep making them feel bad, keep driving them away, keep preventing new people from coming into the market, which will feed money into the system, which will keep the wheel turning. And watch how fast everything that you love disappears. And if you want that to happen so you can get a cheaper comic, well then you're being a little selfish, aren't you? So think about that the next time somebody says, oh, I hope there's a crash because then I can get my comics for cheap. Well, like I said, if you wanted Amazing Spider-Man 300 for cheap, not for nothing, it's been around since approximately 1988. If you waited until now to buy it, don't complain about the price. That's your fault. And there is a thing called online comic books, where if you love reading books so much, you can spend, what, $3 to read a book online? There are many YouTube channels that will actually open up a book and read it. Also, why can't you buy a coverless book? Why are people that claim to be only about the love of the comic and the love of reading a book, why are they so against reading a book with no cover? Why do they need to cover? It has nothing to do with the story. So, unfortunately, most people just placate their audiences, say what they want to hear so they can get as many thumbs up as possible and as few thumbs down as possible and have everybody love them and hug them and say kumbaya, but never tell people what really how life is. The comic book industry, whether it's movies, comic books, toys, what have you, is all about money. Money is what makes them continue to do what they're doing. Why do you think DC and Warner Brothers is going to start revamping and changing the way they've made movies? Because if they loved what they did, what would they need to change? They're changing it. Why? Because they did not make enough money. And the shareholders are the ones that are complaining, and they're going to listen to the shareholders. So if a shareholder doesn't like a director and doesn't like the direction that director is going, they fire them. Keep this in mind. This is reality. If you want to formulate your own bubble where you don't want to hear what's really going on in the world, eventually you're going to be let down to the point where you won't understand anything, and then you're going to blame the world. Because, like, the other day, and I understand why people say this. People say to me all the time, well, you know, ignore the haters and everything like that. But I want you to understand this. If you notice, especially bigger channels, they ignore your comments. They never respond to any comment you make. And if you notice on my channel, I will literally spend hours of the day responding to every single comment people leave. Now, the reason most bigger channels don't get into fights with, haters and stuff like that is because they don't respond to anybody's comments. Now, the last time I checked, the majority of my subscribers actually appreciate that I take the time out of my day to respond to their comments, to answer their questions. So, you can't have it both ways. If I wanted to be 100% drama-free and not worry about the occasional troll, the way to avoid that is by not responding to anybody's comments, not even looking at them. So this way, out of sight, out of mind. Or I can continue to do what I love, which is responding to everybody's stuff, and every now and then somebody will say something stupid. It might trigger me for a second. I'll make a video, and then I'll eventually learn from it, and we all become better people, and humanity is fine and dandy. So I don't regret actually doing that because I interact with my subscribers. If you've made a comment on my channel, I've responded to it. The only time I can't respond to it is like when it gets back and forth when you're replying to another thing that I've already left, because YouTube doesn't leave me any indication of that. So I have no idea what's going on. So you think any way you want. If you have a certain way of thinking and you are unwilling to look at it any other way, there are plenty of channels that will placate your feelings and your emotions and your reality. But that's not going to help you. So if you hate speculators and you hate videos like this because they're saying what you don't want to believe in, you're sitting there putting your fingers in your ears going la la la, well, be careful what you wish for, because the day the speculators disappear, the comics are not going to be like they are. A lot of books are going to go. Movies are going to disappear. Comic book stores are going to go out of business. Tons of people on eBay will lose their income to support their families, all for your selfish need of being able to read a book cheaper. And I'm not saying you as in everybody that's listening. I'm talking about the 10 or 20 people that bash speculators and say, well, if they weren't here, I can get my book cheaper. Well, like I said, some of these books have been out for decades. If you waited this long to buy a book and you're mad that all of a sudden, because you want the same thing everybody else does, you have to spend more money on it, well, that's your own fault. And if you can't take responsibility and prefer to hate me for pointing it out, that's too bad. So yes, my channel's going to be a little controversial. My channel's going to talk about things that some people may not want to hear, or may not want to talk about, or may not want to believe. But if you want the full spectrum of all sides of comic books, maybe this might be a better place to check out. And stop going to places where they'll just placate you. Because then, they don't really care about you. They just care about being treated nice and being patted on the back. And they'll tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. And I think that's why some people respect my channel, and I think that's why others hate my channel. But either way, it is what it is. And if you love it, you'll give it a thumbs up. If you hate it, you'll give it a thumbs down. If you want to share it, that is amazing. If you want to actually wait around for the surprise subscriber shout out, because I always do that, so I even want to do that with the live. So let me scroll and see somebody that catches my eye. And that will be today, John Reynolds. So hopefully you're listening to this right now. Keep an open mind. Learn about business. Learn how business works. Without speculators and investors, half the stuff that you love is gone for good. I remember it in the 90s. I don't want to see that again. So we need to control the industry so they don't do what they did in the 90s and go overboard. And that's why I don't buy as many new books as I used to. But if I see something that catches my eye, I will buy it. But I will not be buying 20, 30, 40 different variants, because that's sending them a message, not that you love it or hate it, but they can make money off it. And that's why they do it. But they just got the majority of people fooled by making you think they actually 100% do it for the love. And like I said, if you believe that, you're kidding yourself, and that's why they're taking advantage of the situation. So join reality and learn how the industries really work, and then you could stop what happened in the 90s. Because all of those readers who hate us speculators, they had decades to buy all the books they wanted for pretty darn cheap. They didn't do it. Why? Because even their followers. Thanks for listening. Have a great day, and it's not you, it's not I, it's we love comics, and believe it or not, even the speculators. Haha, let's see who I trigger now.